to the Marriage Can Win show, and we are your relationship experts, Eric and Dr. Sakeisha Hiley.
Yes, here at Marriage Can Win, we educate, we empower, and we encourage couples to embrace that marriage can win, especially when you focus on three key areas: improving your communication skills, developing your money management skills so you're no longer living paycheck to paycheck, and enhancing your intimacy skills so your marriage can win.
And we like to invite every one of you and your family members to join the show. And when you come on, let us know what city and state you're viewing us from. And then make sure you follow us on Instagram and we'll follow you back.
And we're the Marriage Can Win, also on Twitter. And we are so excited. You know, in May, it's a mental health month. And we have a phenomenal guest joining us this afternoon. We know it's Memorial Day weekend,
yes, it is.
But we still want marriages to win. So we bring you the best of the best. And joining us today is Shawn, LeRe, Brinkley. I mean, she's a positive, energetic spirit who's described as a people person. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice, and her practice is Living Loved Pathways to Holistic Healing. She's a certified trauma recovery specialist, a transformational coach. She's a mindfulness practitioner, a certified laughter yoga instructor, and she's a speaker, presenter, and trainer. She's currently pursuing her doctorate in psychology, and she enjoys helping couples find their sweet spot. So here at Marriage Can Win, we're super excited about diving deep in that conversation with her, because we are going to help couples today find out how they can find their sweet spot. So this is going to be a power-packed show. She tells us that we need to make sure that you live life to the fullest. And she believes that love, laughter, and ADHD are her superpowers. Yes. She lives by the mantra, which every setback is a comeback waiting for you to come to it. So everyone that's watching, whether you're watching live or watching replay, we want you guys to welcome Shawn, LeRe, Brinkley to the Marriage Can Win live show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great this morning on my side of the world.
Oh, yes, you are definitely in a different time zone.
Oh, yes, you're in California, so you're on the opposite side of the nation.
Yes. How has quarantine life been for you over in California?
You know, it's very funny. For me, it's almost been like a gift, honestly.
Okay.
Because I am a person that is always on. And my grandmother used to say that baby goes like 90 going north. So I'm always doing something and having to do something, at least in my mind. So for me, this has been an opportunity to just sit down.
Oh, okay.
I love it.
Yeah, that's the balance piece.
Yes.
But before we get started, I'd like to invite everybody to go ahead and share this broadcast out or start a watch party. And remember, let us know what city and state that you're viewing us from.
And before I forget, there's a note on there. Take advantage of the free gift, because I get really, really deep into these conversations and completely forget. And I'm like, oh my gosh, should I offer it? There's a free gift on the bottom. So if you see the phone number, it's on the screen. It says text the word WIN to 407-258-1246 and get your free gift.
Yes, so, it's an audio version of our book, Marriage Can Win.
Now, Shawn, let's tell our listeners a little bit more about you, how long you've been married. Tell us a little bit more about your business.
Well, so I've been married 11 years. It was in December.
Awesome.
Yes, that's amazing. And my husband is also an entrepreneur. He's a private investigator.
Oh, wow.
And so he's Brinkley Investigative Agency. And so when you ask about this quarantine time, we've been splitting our business between the office and the bedroom. So when I do my Zoom, or not Zoom, but telehealth, I'm doing video therapy and coaching. So I just put a background on and I'm in my bedroom sometimes if he's in the other office. And My business, I actually have been a therapist for 8 years.
Wow.
And I started my private practice almost 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years this October.
Okay.
And I'm very excited to be in private practice. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. And I used to live on the East Coast. I lived in New York for 17 years.
Wow.
I like to say that my motto when I lived in New York was, I will do anything to keep from working a 9 to 5 as long as it's not illegal or immoral.
Good motto. I like it.
And I'm proud to say that I pretty much did that. So I chose to become a therapist at 50 years old. I went back to school to get my master's degree.
Okay.
Wow, because that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. How did you decide that, becoming a therapist was your calling? Was there an aha moment, or it's just something that just said, hey, this is it?
It was almost by accident.
Okay.
So I tell you what changed what sort of drove my heart to that. I was working as the director of an after-school program in Inglewood, California. And before doing that, I worked for Tiffany and Company. My real job for 10 years, I was the customer relations specialist at Tiffany and Company in Beverly Hills for 10 years. And so I worked with celebrity clientele, with very wealthy clientele, and it was kind of a thankless job, because I felt often that I was working for people who really didn't care that I was serving them. Right. It was for them. It was that it was essential that I serve them, and it was my job and my purpose in life to serve them. And I realized that I had definitely a greater purpose. Years and years ago, I was in beauty pageants, and you know how they always ask you, what is your purpose in life? And my purpose in life was always to have fun and to help people. But I felt like if I'm making certain that you get your package on time, if I am setting up a room for you to bring your very wealthy fiance to choose rings, I'm not really helping you further your life in a way that matters, at least in the way that I wanted it to. Okay. So when I started working with children again in this after school program, I had a window into their lives and into their homes and into their families. And I saw that it was so different from what I grew up with and what my peers grew up with, where family was essential and being together was essential, and being healthy and safe was a given. And for these children, it was not. Yeah, and so that kind of touched my heart. And I'm a late night person. And one night I was on the internet, and some pop-up came up. Do you want to go back to school? And I clicked yes. And I was excited with emails from people to go back to school. But the University of Phoenix counselor called me the next day, and persistently for weeks she called me. And one day she said, what are you doing right now? And I said, nothing. She said, come in. So I literally got in the car and went to visit her, and she was very good because I left enrolled. And it was very funny because I was actually leaving that week to go on a musical tour, to do a musical in the South. And so she would fax documents to me at different hotels, and I would fax them back, sign them and fax them back. And I literally came back. I remember it like it was yesterday. I came back July 26th. On the 27th, I met with her in person, and on the 28th, I started class.
Wow. Yeah, I was reading about you, and so you're a singer, and also you do poetry?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, so just multi-talented. So that means you use a lot of creativity. And what side of the brain is that?
That is the right side, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So I'm kind of dual-brained. Which I think is the ADHD.
Or they have the ambidextrous brain, so you can do either one. You just thrive. That's good
Yeah.
though. You cover all bases.
It can also be a little bit overwhelming.
All right, but that's actually not a problem because you're able to identify sometimes what your clients are going through, you know. But then I also read that you deal with different types of trauma.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate and share with our listeners a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I work with trauma in many different ways, like you said. So I work with people, I work sometimes with young women who have had a history of human sex trafficking. And I was introduced to that before I started my private practice. I was working in a group home and I was a therapist and administrator at a 6-bed. All of my girls were on probation, and their reasons for being on probation ranged from truancy to, human sex trafficking. But the key thing was that they all had some form of trauma. And I want to help people. Part of what I like to do is help people understand that trauma has many faces and that it's not always this big, huge thing like sexual assault, rape, trafficking, a bad accident. But sometimes trauma is just the atmosphere in which you live. So a lot of my youth were living with parents who had their own trauma that was unresolved. And so that showed up in the way that they parented. And so it's really in my heart to help families overall. And that's kind of how I end up working so much with couples.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Well, I guess the foundation would be the couples. So if the husband and wife have a healthy mentality, then the rest of the family will benefit from that.
Absolutely. It's so imperative. And that's why I also enjoy doing premarital counseling, because I think it starts way before the marriage actually happens.
Yes, I agree with you on
So
that.
that's really important.
Wow. Now, I know you were talking about when you said you deal with a lot of young ladies. So with these young ladies, what kind of advice or what strategies would you give them to help to be able to connect more with their spouse? Because if they're dealing with these unresolved issues, they're carrying this baggage, how it makes it more difficult to enter into a healthy relationship. So what's your suggestion for them, or your strategies you have for them?
Yeah, the first thing there is helping them to forgive themselves.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when women have had sexual trauma, they internalize it and they believe that they are the cause of it. They are the reason. Even young ladies who are abducted, thrown into a van and driven away, that they did something wrong. And so a lot of women believe that they chose their path. And so it's helping them to get through that forgiveness of healing themselves, because if they don't forgive themselves, you well know that they won't be able to forgive anybody else.
Wow, that's true.
And I believe marriage is a series of forgiveness.
Yes, it is. I know that shows up because we cover what we call the Great Divide, which is the 3 biggest issues we found in relationships that cause them to fail, and it's communication, finance, and sex. And then with the sex piece, it's like, especially women or men, they can't find it pleasurable because of some sexual trauma in the past. The wife has been abused, she's been raped or something at a younger age, and she relates sex with something that's traumatic and that's not pleasurable. So she becomes what we call frigid franny when it comes to sex. She's just like, get it over with, It's not a pleasurable thing. It becomes, we got to do this again. Let's get it over with. And then the husband's like, well, wondering why she's not, being pleased or enjoying it, and it becomes something that she resents.
Yes.
So for those
Yes.
that are listening, if I can have someone, if you could chat in the chat box, put forgive yourself, because that's a really key point that Shawn brought up. You need to be able to forgive yourself. And thank you so much to those that are joining from LA. Because forgiveness is something that it's very difficult. It's an intentional thing. It's an intentional process that we have to walk through, and it can be challenging. Sometimes we don't even know that we're harboring unforgiveness, and it starts to manifest itself in other ways in our marriages and relationships.
Absolutely.
So, that's one key thing. Forgive yourself. That's really, really important.
Right.
I love that. Because, you have to be able to relate, and you need to be able to connect with your spouse, but it's almost like you're here, they're there, but there's this big brick wall between the two of you that's preventing you from just, thank you so much. Is it Tassonia? Thank you so much for typing that in. When you have this barrier in between you, preventing you from completely coming together. So you've got to start tearing down that wall, and it's a process.
Yes,
yes. And we look at it as something that's like almost overwhelming, but you can do that. You know how they say, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
One bite at a time.
You got to do something, be intentional, do small acts, and to be able to chip away at that wall, because that same wall that we're using to protect ourselves is the same wall that's preventing us from connecting. So it's like a double edged.
Absolutely. When you mentioned that frigid franny, a lot of times I call it chipping away at the iceberg. And so right in line with what I'm saying, because the warmth factor is the thing that will melt that ice. And so you can chip and you can warm, and you can chip and you can warm, and eventually, as you forgive and you learn the communication piece that you talked about, because a lot of times a woman is afraid to say what she's feeling, what she's thinking, and share about her hurts, because she thinks that makes her less than.
Wow.
So what steps do you take to address that issue?
The first thing in any situation like this is trust. And I have to allow the person to get to know me, and I get to know them, so that they can trust me, because trust is the first thing that's stripped away when a woman is abused like that. And so, I'm really kind of light and easy breezy, and I laugh a lot. And so that kind of helps to break that ice and ease the pain of, I got to talk about this, right? And a lot of times I don't start with rehashing what happened, because that can be re-traumatizing. There's all kinds of schools of thought that believe that, once you can talk about it, you can get past it. But sometimes people can't speak it. They cannot find the words. So I use all kinds of non-traditional methods. I had the blessing to be involved in an organization that trained us how to use art as a healing tool. Now, I am by no means a graphic or fine artist. I am not good at that piece, but you can use coloring, there is one particular exercise that I love, and it's called claiming who you are.
I like that.
And I have a term called stepping into your who you are-ness. I make up words. So
it's the creativeness.
Yes, there it is. Hi Ty, hi Gigi. Those are my girls. But this exercise I love, because the first thing that you do is write down all of the negative things that you believe about yourself, that you've been taught. And then we go back to that parenting that we were talking about, when children are told you're stupid, you'll never be anything. All those kinds of things, you write it down. And I mean, you should see the pens and the going on the paper, just fervently writing. And then once you get all of that, I have created a pail that has made out of construction paper fire, using oranges and reds and yellows. And you rip it up. Then we make a big deal of the ripping it up process, and you rip it up into teeny tiny small pieces, and you make sure that none of it falls on the floor, because you're getting rid of all of it. And then you dump it into the fire. And what we also have is we have little cutout figurines, like the head to toe, cut out in cardstock. And I bring fabric, I bring coloring, crayons, markers, rhinestones. I like anything that sparkles. And so they bring all these, they come and they select their fabric and they select their colors and all of that. And they're going to dress this person as themselves. And there's also a circle. And in that circle, that's your core. That's who you are at your core. And then they write all the things that are true and positive about themselves in that circle. And they can put that circle under the clothing, on top of the clothing, wherever they choose. But they have to make sure that they attach that core. And you should see the people that end up. And then we take pictures of you holding your person. And it's amazing. It's just a simple exercise, but there are tears, there are breakthroughs that come from just that simple thing because of the symbolism of just reclaiming yourself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, who you were before the pain.
Yeah, regaining that. That's, I guess, because you really lose your identity in that. You just, because like you said, if you're always blaming yourself, you really, that's very traumatic, and that's going to affect you in all areas of your life, especially when it comes to relationship. Because now you have to form kind of an alliance with your spouse, and once you get with your spouse, I know we always deal with our clients that this is a safe zone. This is a trust zone. And if you're still holding on baggage from the past and you don't even know your identity and you've lost your trust, how can you reestablish it with your spouse? So really, like you say, the premarital counseling is really to identify those traumatic experiences and that baggage. Before you become one with someone, you got to become one with yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said about the identity and the alliance, because you're bringing this broken identity to another person and you're almost handing them the baggage.
Yes.
If you don't work on that resolution for yourself, you're just handing it to them and say, deal with my stuff. And you're doing that even if you're healthy, right? So you've got all this other, unfortunate stuff packed into those bags. It makes it very difficult.
And then you have to be mindful, because when you're connecting with your spouse, remember, all of us are imperfect. So they're bringing their own set of baggage. So here you are presenting your baggage and they have their baggage. So then the two of you together, it's like, wait a minute, you got to learn how to, do you teach them in your practice pretty much how to unpack this baggage such that they can have a healthy mindset, a healthy atmosphere for your marriage to be able to win? Because sometimes you have so many things that you're bringing in. How can you expect to win? You're carrying all the stuff that you weren't meant to carry. So you have to be able to release it,
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because when couples come in and they're already married, and I say, well, do you know this about your spouse? No. Well, what is she? What's your favorite cup? And they get real uncomfortable and they squirm. I'm like, well, do y'all even know each other? Do y'all know her? And they'll be married for years. What are y'all talking about? And so that's really important. And I do exercises like that. I give them, first of all, I always do the love languages.
Okay, yeah.
Because I learned a long time ago that you love people the way that you want to be loved. That's our natural bent, right? So I'm doing these things for you and you're not appreciating them and I'm feeling some type of way. And
we know about that.
That's not even on your radar as something that you would enjoy or want as a love language. And so I learned that we were speaking entirely different languages. And so I always do that because people are always shocked And they're like, that's what you really, that kind of thing. So that's the first thing about getting to know one another. And then I also have a whole long, ridiculous questionnaire that they have to fill out. Like, well, of course, the intake even goes all the way back again to childhood. Wow. What did you see growing up? I have couples that one will have seen her parents hugging and loving and giggling and laughing and sexing it up everywhere. And then another, the partner is like, I don't even think my parents liked each other. I never saw them touch, and that's a real thing. And so you're coming in and you're like living in this foreign place where your partner wants and needs this, and you don't know how to give it.
That's we have that explained to us by our pastor, and from the past is where you have two individuals coming together, and they come into a crescendo. You have one individual who's been growing up and they've been experiencing their different generations, what they see, whether they come from a two-parent household or one-parent household, whether there was some kind of addiction in that household, whether it was affection or whatever. It's always some kind of trauma, whatever. And so the other individual, the same thing. They have a perspective on life and relationship. And maybe they saw affection. Maybe they didn't see any affection. Maybe they were told about sex. Maybe they were told about marriage. Maybe they were told about their role as becoming a husband or a wife, what the expectations are. And then when they come together, they have totally two different views, two different perspectives, two different experiences, and they're trying to mesh to become one. And also keeping in mind that what worked for their parents don't necessarily work for them. Because, a lot of times we have older parents that came from the civil rights movement. And so what worked for them at that time is, maybe they didn't show a lot of affection because they were always working. They were dealing with racism and discrimination. So it was not a lot of happy times in there. And so they didn't see a lot of hugging and love being expressed. So they don't know how to, when it's time to get together all they know is, well, we're married. That's it. There is no affection. And like you were talking about, the love languages, one person may want touch and affection. The other one just want, hey, give me do the dishes, pick up your clothes, and they happy, So, and this is why, with our book, that it birthed in our, what we call defining moment. I always talk about our defining moment, not only in life, but in our marriage. This book birthed out, and because we have experienced all the issues in communication, finance, and sex. And communication is always being the key issue. And so if we can communicate before we get married, we can express what we expect. We can talk about our past differences, our past traumas and dramas, and then we can get together with someone like you with your expertise and deal with those traumas and dramas. So when it's time to have an alliance, we can mesh versus, call it Clash of the Titans.
yes, absolutely. I love that mesh. Yes. It's funny because couples will come in and you talk about communication. They will come in and I'll say, well, did you guys talk about this? Well, no. And I literally have couples that will not, they'll have a feeling, something will happen in their marriage during the week and they won't say anything until they get to me. And I'm like, okay, let's look this over. This is not working because I need you to talk about it and then come to me and tell me what was good about it, what wasn't good about it, and how you want to change that. But we don't have anything to work with if you're not taking me home. You can't afford that. So I need you to practice, and it's so funny because sometimes couples come to me and I'm like, do y'all even like each other?
Oh, yeah.
Because they've let it get so bad that they don't even remember why they got together in the first place. And so I do that exercise too. And I make them go and have a date and simulate that first date. Talk about what you thought when you saw him or her, and why you even asked for them digits, as we, you know, and then that kind of breaks the ice also, and makes people kind of go, oh yeah. And then where did it go left when you meant to go right? What happened?
Yeah.
What got you here?
What role does fear play in a lot of these? Because sometimes we, as couples, there's so many things going on. We have these, as my friend calls them, high-spirited debates, or intense fellowships, however you want to call it. But then we walk away and it's still unresolved. It's like one of those things we keep sweeping under the rug. And next thing you know, you see this big rug with this big hill underneath it, but you want to act like it's not there.
Right.
And then it's going to all of a sudden disappear.
That's that pink elephant hiding under there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, what was the question? I got caught up.
You're dealing with like fear, you know, is fear a huge role in that? And what's your suggestion to those couples that may have that huge pink elephant in the room that they're unwilling to address?
Why had to be pink? Why can't it be blue?
Well, it has a pink half and a blue half. You better know.
Different perspectives coming together.
Oh, that's it.
That's it. That multicolor elephant under the rug. You know, fear is so huge.
Yeah.
It's so there, and there's a lot of facets to it. There's fear of not being heard.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Fear of not knowing how to say it, of being considered silly or petty, or that my feelings don't matter. And that's really a big one. And you know, fear of how I'll be received. And I think a lot of times men stand under this fear of being considered soft, because you might have this idea that to be a man is to be hard and, you know, tough, and you don't show your feelings, you don't show your emotions. That makes you soft, you know. But and nobody knows what the other person wants, you know. And so that's why we've had all these movies, what women want and what men want, and that was a mess. What they really want is to be heard, validated.
Now, you said something really, really key. You said a lot of times women feel that their feelings don't matter. And if that is such a huge, like a common denominator, what's your suggestion for these women that may be feeling like that? Like my feelings just don't matter.
I invite them first to write down their feelings. Because what happens a lot of times is because you have that fear and you feel that way when you're face to face. And sometimes we shut down.
Yeah.
And so write them down when you're feeling it, like when it's real warm for you. But write them down so that you can be really clear what it is that you need to say. And then express even that fear to your partner. Like, I am afraid to say what I'm really feeling sometimes because I feel like my feelings don't matter and you don't care. Because by the time you've gotten to the preacher, chances are he does care about what you think and say. Right? But he may not know how to even show you that he cares.
Yeah.
And so you got to give a lot of grace. That part, you have to have a lot of grace for your partner's pre-experience. Their experience before they got to you.
So what kind of advice do you give to the wife when and this is a common thing, especially now during this COVID, because they're home and everybody's home, the family's home. And so when they seem to be overwhelmed, especially if they have a business and they're operating in a business, and they're both operating in business, and they have so much going on in the home, their children in school, and it just seems like that weight comes on, and any little thing the husband says to her, she just, goes off. What kind of advice? I mean, is there some kind of tip or strategy so it won't be so much tension? And
yes, behave, girl.
say that again.
I said behave, girl, because a lot of times as women, we're impatient with the differences between men and women. And my sisters might be mad at me, but sometimes we are so quick to judge and want the man to think like we think, and they don't. They absolutely do not. It's scientific, ladies. The brains are very different. I'm going to tell you, there is a YouTube video. I invite every couple to watch it. Get your popcorn. So first of all, there's a 1 hour part to it. Don't watch that one. There's a 13-minute segment, and it's a tale of two brains.
A tale of two.
Like a tale of two cities. Tale of two brains.
Huh, I like that.
And the guy, his name is Mark with a G. I don't know the rest, but he talks about how a man's brain. Now, Eric, see if you can relate. A man's brain is like a series of boxes. Now, Sakeisha, I know your mama had a Sewing Notions box, right? That little box with all those little bitty boxes. Mm-hmm. Picture that.
Okay.
And in the boxes are things that the man needs to deal with. And he will take out one box very carefully. Don't let it touch those other ones. And he'll sit it down and he'll deal with what's in that box. And then he'll take that box and he will put it away. And then he'll take out the next box and he will deal with what's in that box. Now, if you come walking in and he's dealing with the finances box, and you're talking about that event that we're going to in a few weeks, and what are you going to wear? He can't hear you. It's not that he doesn't care about the event. It's not that he doesn't care what he wears or what you wear, and that you're going to look beautiful and it's going to be a special magical night. It's not that. He's dealing with the finances box, and you came in and disrupted his flow. So now there is a box that he talks about that women hate, and I can attest absolutely, and it's called the nothing box. And every now and then he will pull out that box and sit it there, and he will be like this, doing nothing. And we're like, well, what you doing? What's the problem? How come? And he's in that box. Now, women, our brains are like a series of wires. When you get yarn and you roll the yarn this way for a while, and then you send it over this way, and it goes like that. Imagine that's wires, and those wires are firing. Pop, 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 pop. And that's how we operate. Mm-hmm. So yes, I got to fix the breakfast. Let me do that. I'm gonna get that. Who's on the phone? What's going on here? Okay. Let me fix my hair. Let me put my makeup on. You're driving. You put on. That's how our brains work. Yes. And imagine my brain that also has a challenge of ADHD. Okay. And you know what? I recently discovered that when I was teaching therapists, a program, that I have ADHD. And so that's why I own it, because it explains my life to me. Okay. And I love it. But that's how our brains work automatically. And so that's why we are thinking about this and that and the other. And that's why we look at each other like, where do you come from? Mars and Venus, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Right.
It is 100% real. But as women, we want them to think the way that we think and understand the way that we think. So the minute that you clear the air and are like, I don't know the first thing about what you're talking about, how you operate or whatever, but I sure do love you. Mm-hmm. Then you're good to go. Somebody said, "What takes so long dealing with these boxes?"
Yeah, I was going to tell you about that, and then I got a question on that. But
well, some men take longer than others, but that's why it's so important. I don't want to mess up your beautiful name, Pihas. I like it though. But it's that we do have to exercise patience. We have to exercise patience and understanding. And you can coax without nagging, because nobody wants to be called a nag. That's the thing that makes us the most angry, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's just asking the question and setting it up in advance. Like, babe, when you're doing so and so and so, does it disrupt you when I come in and ask you something? Can you, rather than snap at me, can you say, you know what, babe, thank you. I'll get back to you on that. And that is okay to say on both sides.
I'll get back to you.
And sometimes it's important to do that when you're starting to feel that heat. Because I had a women's ministry leader many years ago, because I learned that I process a minute later. So it's kind of like, did you just make me mad? Did you just say that? I had this woman in my church who was constantly coming at me like this. She was fast and quick and throwing them curveballs. And I was like, whoa, whoa. And so when I talked to her about it, she said, well, you know, Shawn LeRe, it's okay for you to say, you know, I need a minute to process that and I'm going to get back to you. And I was like, oh, I can do that? And so I invite couples to take permission and do that, because it's okay. We figure it all out today in this minute.
Oh, wow.
Pahua says,
We only have a certain amount of time to live with each other. Why take so long? Ain't nobody got time for that.
That is funny. Well, Pahua, you have more time than you think. And the important thing is, how do you want to spend that time? I invite each partner to step off of your position.
Yeah.
Get off your position. You don't get to win every one. And you have to ask what is more important and where's the middle ground.
I was going to ask that, how to find that bridge, because I know a lot of times, and this is common with men, rather than to try to argue their perspective, they just say, whatever you say, babe, whatever you do, that's fine with me. And for some reason, that doesn't end. They get worse. They want to get mad. But baby, calm down. That's what people get better.
Yeah, that's a trigger. Don't do that, Eric. You about to lose there. You know what happens there? Because then a woman feels dismissed. Because she knows good and well that you are not resolved. And she knows really that she's not resolved. And so when you say that, okay, and throw up your hands, throw the towel in, then she feels like, well, why are you giving up? And that's where she feels too, like, well, you just don't, it doesn't matter what I think. And that's your way of getting her to be quiet.
Now, I have a question about that, because you want to find, is it okay for couples to create like a
Get it on the head.
a time limit, you know, because like Pahua said, she said she needs him to be quicker to reset.
Yeah,
you don't want to rush the issue, but you don't want someone to let it linger on and on and on. Is it okay for the couple to kind of come up with a time, you know, let's take 30 minutes to an hour, kind of decompress, allow the high emotions to try to calm down, because you do want peace in your home. You know, you don't want to spend most of your time arguing and being at odds. But, you know, when you have it where the woman might be a little more, okay, I really want to get this done, and he's more, well, I'm unpacking this box slowly. What about the two of them coming to an agreement and saying, hey, let's give each other an hour, and then we'll come back to revisit this issue. You know, it might be longer than an hour. Each couple is going to be different, you know. But what about setting time boundaries? Because, you know, some people might take 5-6 days. And I'm being realistic. And
No,
then
you are. You totally are.
honestly, what you do is you allow the enemy to come in, because then you're frustrated because that's not resolved. So then any little thing after that, it becomes a domino effect, and every other thing starts to irritate you because you haven't even really resolved that one issue.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And I call that the holla back method.
Oh, okay.
And I tell the couples, like, if you get to a point where you're right here, you're at an impasse, you know, even huge nations do that. You know what I mean? So just take a moment and agree that, you know, we're not getting anywhere, baby. I need to, but who has said it? Reset. And so I'm gonna holla back. And this is the thing. You must give a timeline on when you're gonna holla back, though.
Okay.
I will holler back in an hour. Let's go back in, and then in an hour you come back. You breathed a little bit. You've done a little mindful meditation. You know, had a snack, whatever, and now you're back. And maybe you can see differently. And I always share with them, approach it like this. I'm so sorry that we got to that point. Like, you're not saying, I'm sorry, I did this. I'm not sorry, and you shouldn't have done that. You're saying, I'm sorry, we got to that point. But now I'm really ready to resolve this.
Well, that's good. We got two questions out there.
Okay.
One,
There was one, Dana made a comment.
yeah, let me go up to that one, then we'll come back.
So get charges to my head, not to my heart. We're trying to get to all of the questions, but they say, is it more important to be right or make peace? We may suppress too many feelings and then we explode, which is the one thing we want to ultimately avoid.
Yes.
Yes. So you kind of have two things there, Dana, because I think that sometimes people think that when you choose to make peace rather than be right, that doesn't mean that you get to still harbor that thing so that you later explode. So it has to be a conscious okay. You have to step and be in your okayness when you make that choice to not be right. So it's something that's really important to you. You just say, well, I'm just going to act like it didn't happen, or I'm going to ignore it. No, that's not it. It's when you decide that. So how can I explain? I want to say this properly. So in a situation where your belief system is being challenged, and it's something that you just cannot go with, then no, you can't ignore that and make peace, because you will have no peace, right? So if it's something, you know, the little things that we can argue about, you know, really don't mean a hill of beans. At the end of the day, it's just, again, standing on your position. So you can let your position relax and make peace. But if it's a core belief, you cannot try to cover that with peace, because you won't be at peace. And then that's when everything he or she does comes back on you, and then you explode. Absolutely. And so that's when you have to take that break and do the holler back.
Yeah.
And so you go back and maybe talk it out again. Or that's when you better holler at me, and somebody can help you walk through that, so that you don't end up in a space that's just uncomfortable and ungood.
There was another.
Did we get this one?
Yeah.
Absolutely. How do you deal with the person with a reason? Okay, we got that one.
There was a comment. Yeah. Comment. She said, we should be able to express your feelings even when they're negative, but it must be controlled and managed. And I would think that would take place after you've been through that holler back phase. You're able to calm down and then talk about it in a controlled manner, because when you're operating at high emotions, it's low intelligence.
Oh, you know that, right?
Yeah, start spewing out of your mouth.
Yes.
Absolutely. And by the way, I do a lot of that kind of teaching with couples. and help them to understand how the brain actually works, because I love the brain. It fascinates me. And I think that, like you mentioned, the frontal lobe up here, where all the decision making and the reasoning is going on, does not work at the same time as this emotion center back here. So when this is going woo 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 back here, this is going I ain't doing that. And then when you can calm this down a little bit, and then this opens up, then you're good to go. And that's the reason that it doesn't work when you get way up there.
Yeah.
It's not good. Things come out that you didn't mean, that you would never say, and all of those kinds of things. So it's not good to argue or try to resolve something when you're way up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another one. There was an explosion yesterday. I don't know if I want to be okay anymore.
Well, Pahua, that's when I think it's time to seek help.
Yeah.
And not be afraid to do that. Because sometimes we need somebody who can see both perspectives objectively and offer interventions and solutions that you might not be able to see, especially if you feel like you don't want to be okay anymore. Then there has been a series of things that have happened that have made you go to that space. And maybe there's just some little tweak that you guys need to have that would just help you to open up and be able to be okay and be able to want to be okay.
Yeah.
So I would say seek help.
This is good. Now, are there any more questions out there? Because we are wrapping up, and I'm like, I know, I'm really liking this. We might have to extend this.
We're gonna have to do it. Now, I know there's, we were talking originally about finding your sweet spot, but there was something in your bio that I have to ask about. You made a comment that says, when life gives you lemons, you must not make lemonade. You must suck on them until it tastes like chocolate. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I love the second part.
I will do that. So here's the thing. I believe that we, sometimes we can give up way too quick.
Yeah.
And so, let's say something has happened and it's looking like a lemon for sure.
Yeah.
And you're like, and someone will say, well, you have to make lemonade out of that. So then someone will give you advice and say, well, maybe you can do this with that, or look at it this way. And you try that and it's just still not working, and you're still feeling some type of way about something. Then that's when I offer that your resilience needs to kick in. You need to be resilient, rejuvenate, and reinvent. And that might take you taking that lemon and sucking on that thing and using your mind to make it seem like it's chocolate. Because to me, in the world, there's nothing better than chocolate. Sex and chocolate, they right up there together. So, so I think you have to sometimes stick with it until it's something you can manage. It's something that you can love.
Yeah, I love chocolate.
Now, you said something. You said you need to be resilient, rejuvenate. Say that one more time, because I'm making these notes.
Okay. So my motto is resilience, rejuvenation, and reinvention. Those are the things that help you make it through something. Go ahead.
No, I'm just repeating that.
What you were saying. Yeah. So that was good. I like that.
I have I kind of say, when I mentioned before that trauma kind of found me, I didn't really find it in terms of the work that I do, and I have been I've been in several major accidents, none of which I was the driver, and so back in the 1980s, I was in New York City. I took a taxi to work where I was going in to teach dance and aerobics. And I was the taxi driver that I was with. When I got out, he took off. He was upset because he wasn't pleased with his tip. He took off, and not on purpose, I don't think, but he dragged me. I was dragged 2.5, and the wheel ran off the calf of my leg. That was number one. I got better. I was in the hospital for 30 days in traction, wheelchair, the whole bit. Got better. I took a taxi with a friend who came to visit to a mall, and on the way back, we were going to my favorite restaurant, and we got hit from a truck, from behind by a truck, and into a pole. back in the hospital. That was number 2. In all of this, I gained 100 pounds in a year and a half. I was a dancer and all of that. I had, fitness, the whole bit. Okay. Number 3, I go to Harlem to get my hair braided. Now I'm teaching full figure women fitness in their homes. Remember, I try to not work a 9 to 5. And at that time, I crossed the street, and it was a misty day, and a produce truck turned left and hit me. So I went up in the air. I hit the ground. I was unconscious. There was one person on the street who stopped the traffic because the light changed a block before. And I was back in the hospital, short-term memory loss, the whole bit. So I am generally, I'm always a happy girl. I've always been just happy. In college, they used to call me terminally happy, TH.
Wow.
But it was hard to kind of figure out how to be happy behind all that. So I learned that in that time, my happiness came from food. So I would be happy and whatever, but I was eating my feelings and eating that hurt and eating that chronic pain and eating all of that. And so, but I've always been able to find my way back. And so, of course, God, that's number 1. But I think God gave me what I needed in terms of the resilience that I needed to rejuvenate. And then I reinvented myself a bunch of times. so I think that's why I get to do this, because I look at this as that's my gift. And as that being my gift, I get to give that away. And so that's really the why. That's my why. And that's why I do what I do. And when I got hit that first time and they told me, you're not going to dance again and all of that, there was no lemonade that was going to be sweet enough for me to be okay. So I had to suck on that thing and suck on that until I could believe that it was chocolate. And if I have chocolate in my life, I am good. I can do this. And so that's the metaphor for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So as we kind of bring this session to the close, we're supposed to be talking about the sweet spot a little bit. We've covered so many amazing things, and thank you to our viewers who've been pouring in, who've been connecting, asking questions. We really appreciate it. That's the purpose of these broadcasts, all for marriages. So tell us a little bit about how you help these couples find their sweet spot.
So the sweet spot is that space where, a lot of times couples come in and they're arguing about things that don't matter. But that is just the sort of the bird's eye view of what the deeper problem is. And so I believe the sweet spot is when you can clear away all that negative energy, all that disrupts that relationship, all that murky water that's in there, and get to the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is when you're in sync and there's this harmonious blend of love and sex and intimacy that allows you to really, it's kind of, I call it the friendship romance capsule. And that's when you are able to have a romantic relationship with someone that you actually like and respect and care about their well-being and are in tune in such a way that it's just sweet. And that's how you find the sweet spot.
Wow. So I know you dropped so many nuggets of wisdom today. And I'm sure that our listeners, they're sitting there like, oh my gosh, I know it's not the end of the show. But how can our listeners stay in contact with you? Do you have any events that you're going to be hosting soon? Where can they reach you?
So there will be some things coming up with my virtual mentor, which is Karen Crockett Cherry. Because I'm a part of a collaborative book effort called Trailblazers Who Lead. And in that book, there are 30 women who are trailblazers in their many different fields. And we are sharing how we where we came from and how we got to where we are now. And so that's one thing. And so there will be many things coming up surrounding that book.
Okay.
People can follow me on Instagram. I do videos on Instagram that I'm repurposing, of course, to Facebook and also to YouTube. So I'll share those handles. My Instagram is at Living Loved Healing, and that's loved, Loved, like I have been loved. And my Facebook business page is Living Loved Pathways to Holistic Healing. And my let's see, what's my YouTube channel? Right now, my YouTube channel is my name, Shawn LeRe. That's LARE Brinkley. And Shawn LeRe is like Marianne. It's just a little bit fancier. So you say it all together. And then the websites, of course, are livinglovedhealing.org, and the coaching website, which is still under construction, is livinglovedcoaching.com.
Wow, that's awesome. So I'm okay. All right. And then in our, like, one of our closing comments, just if you can take a moment and just give the couples out there that are listening, what's your number one strategy out there that they can implement so that their marriage can win?
I think it's learning how to communicate in this way. There are 3 steps. It's called the Imago method. And the first would be, when you're communicating, whoever is sending the message gets to say what they need to say uninterrupted. And then you, as the receiver, repeat it back, almost word for word, to see if you got what they're saying, because that's important. If you did, then you move forward to validate what they said, because that's the key thing, is people need to feel validated and as though they have been heard. And then you actually empathize. Now, let me explain. Empathizing doesn't necessarily mean, ooh, that's great, I understand, I get it, I'm with you. It doesn't mean that, but it means that if I were you, then I might feel that same way too. And I never want to make you feel less than, or whatever that negative feeling that your partner is feeling at the time. And so I think those 3 things in communicating, they also, it's very hard to argue if you've got a task. And the task is to listen, reflect back, empathize, validate, and empathize. That's the way that you have to communicate most of the time. Now, of course, you're not going to be like, okay, but sometimes to start out, you have to do that. And so I invite you to practice that with appreciations. And one other thing, the 6-second kiss. When you're feeling some type of way, even when you're not, make your kiss last for at least 6 seconds. And as an exercise, do it for a week. Every kiss is 6 seconds. You'll find yourself giggling and laughing, and you won't have time to fight.
Yeah, I like that. You have that patent? Because I think we want to use it.
Wow, that is amazing.
You can use it. You have permission.
All right. And Lynn says, great job. She loves Shawn. She loves chocolate. Fua says she loves it too.
I know, Lynn. We share chocolate sometimes.
We had Fua joining us, Lynn, Ty, Trell. I saw Dana. I saw Lenny. I've seen some Trell.
Sonia.
Ramona, how are you? Jerry, Sonia, thank you guys so much for joining. Make sure you share it out or and catch the replay and just type replay in so we know that you're watching the replay, because our goal is to continue to help educate, empower, and encourage couples to embrace that marriage can win. And we do that through these series of videos and interviews. And this has just been the icing on the cake for May in the Mental Health Awareness Month. I mean, Shawn, this has been a blessing. We're so glad we got connected and so glad that we were able to get you on the show. And for those couples out there that are watching that are struggling, we do have our new book release that's coming out. It's called Struggling to Keep the Vows. So you go ahead and grab your pre-sale copies today. I think it's an investment of like $20 plus a minimal shipping and handling fee. You can go to Sakeisha.strugglingtokeepthevowsbook.com, and it's just been a blessing. I don't know what to say. We're gonna have to have you back on again, Shawn.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome, and I love this whole show and the concept. And thank you for doing it. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. So for everyone else, we'll be back on again next week, Tuesday night. So definitely stay connected. Shoot us an email or DM if you have some more topics that you want us to cover.
Oh, yes. Now remember, we have we'll be on next Tuesday as well on the Love Radio Network at 9:00 p.m. That's the Love, LUV Radio Network. And you can also call in and ask questions. So that's on Tuesday. And then we also have Winning Wives Pray
on Thursday nights at 9:00. So.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And then we have like we have now, Relationship Development Close show on Wednesdays as well
at 9:00. So
I love it.
We love you guys.
Subscribe to us on the podcast, the YouTube channels. Just stay connected with us.
All right. And remember, you can be the change you want to see in your relationship. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.